Hello Tech Time Travelers, and today we have just a short little show and tell video of something that I purchased recently that I think is really neat. I was actually planning on doing a full deep dive video for this, and that's why you see this little base station here, which I bought for it, hoping that I could try and test it out. But unfortunately, this guy is missing some crucial parts, or rather a crucial part that is necessary for it to function. And because of what it is, it's unlikely I'll ever find it. So I'm just gonna do a show and tell for now, just to show it off, because I think it's kind of neat. Yeah, this is a prototype, or allegedly, according to the seller, this is a prototype Intel ChatPad. This is part of a stable of consumer products that Intel was producing in the late 90s, early 2000s. And I actually had one of their products. It was a digital camera. It was actually a webcam. It had a base that you could plug it into and swivel it around on. But you could also take it on the road and take pictures like it was a normal digital camera. It had horrible resolution. It could not store very many pictures on the internal flash RAM. It didn't have a flash. It didn't have the ability to adjust zoom or anything. And you basically had to take a picture in exactly the right lighting conditions to get something approaching, something resembling your subject. But still, it was kind of a really cool thing nonetheless, because at the time, digital cameras were not exactly common, and the ones that were out there were really expensive. And the Intel one was cheap. So in the early 2000s, Intel had this suite of products available, and one of the things they were doing was they had this wireless base station, and there were various devices you could connect to your computer wirelessly using this thing, including keyboard, mouse, and this toilet seat shaped gamepad, which looks really bizarre. I've never actually seen one of those in person, but I vaguely remember them. And they also had some other devices that were in the works. They had something called the WebPad, which was basically a tablet, 9 years before Apple came out with the iPad, that was able to basically surf the web wirelessly. And then they came out with the ChatPad.
We've got wireless peripherals and all sorts of new and exciting wireless peripherals. I think one of the more exciting is a ChatPad, which is a wireless internet instant messaging device. This basically enables wireless connectivity to your PC for instant messaging over the internet. So basically wireless connection from the ChatPad to the PC to your ISP, from the ChatPad to the PC to your ISP, from the ChatPad to the PC to your ISP, over the internet to the PC, over the internet, from the ChatPad to the PC to your ISP, over the internet to the internet. Lots of devices like this.
And that's what we're going to be showing off today. They never actually produced this for sale. As far as I know, this only existed as a prototype. The information available about it online is quite scarce. Apart from trademark registrations and a few mentions of it in news articles, there's really not much there. There is a photograph that you can see of the ChatPad operating, and it's got basically what looks like something on the screen, but for all we know, that may have just been like a plastic applique that went over the front of the screen and just kind of provided a demonstration of what it would look like. You've probably seen that if you've ever gone to a store that sells electronics and they're not actually showing them powered up. They might be dummy devices and they just have a clear plastic thing with a sample of what the screen probably would look like. Now, why did Intel get involved in consumer products? As far as I've been able to read, it was mainly because they wanted to sell more chips, more support chips, more microprocessors, stuff like that. And I think some of it too had a little bit to do with the hype of the internet, because these products, I believe, were conceived in the late 90s, before the whole .com crash happened in around 2000. So I think they were thinking this was probably a growth market of sorts. Anyway, the ChatPad ended up being a victim of bad timing. Intel basically decided to get out of the market abruptly, just abandon the whole consumer electronics gig. And in fact, they had about 1,100 of the WebPads produced at the time that they decided to exit. and they sold all of those off to their employees. Now the chat pad, we really don't know sort of what happened with that because there's not really much documentation about it whatsoever. And so I don't know if this piece that I hold here is actually a prototype or if it's a pilot unit that ended up in some Intel employee's hands and then kind of worked its way down over the years to me. It would be neat if this were the prototype that appeared at the CES show and is in that photograph that I showed you earlier, but I don't think there's any way to prove that unless someone from Intel shows up there. One of the reasons I'm kind of suspicious about it being a prototype, as the seller claimed, is there's no prototype stickers on it. And although Intel may have done things differently, most products that I've seen that are prototypes from large companies usually will have a sticker that says, you know, not for resale, and it'll have an actual prototype serial number. And you see this a lot on Apple prototypes that periodically pop up on eBay. We do have a blank where the serial number would have gone, so clearly this was not intended for public sale, but I can't tell you for sure if it's actually a prototype or not. So anyway, let's open it up here and we'll just have a look at the hardware, what hardware we have. So obviously as we open it up, this is clearly intended to be a messaging device. There's no mouse or any kind of pointer or anything like that, or anything that you could use potentially for gaming, I wouldn't think. So I think this was in the vein of an internet appliance, sort of like this earlier e-message terminal, which was designed to allow you to access the internet solely for the purposes of checking your emails and messages. However, unlike the e-message here, which relied on a plug-in connection to your phone line because it had its own modem to dial out with, this fed off your computer via this base station. So you plug this base station into your computer and then connected the device to it, or at least that was the intent. And that's kind of cool because it meant that you could take this device, you know, anywhere in your house and do your messaging at a time when owning a portable computer was a very expensive proposition. It also meant, at least from what I've read, that you could do this while someone else was using the computer for something else. So you weren't tying up the family computer for basic messaging tasks while someone else needed to use it for work or something. So that was pretty cool. In terms of size and weight, it is kind of bulky. Intel kind of had this fascination with translucent blue and white. Blue and white were their corporate colors. And they really had this weird obsession with making these kind of rounded, bulbous shapes. You saw the gamepad earlier, you know what I'm talking about. Even the little webcam that they produced, which we had the same kind of theme going on. And I guess that's just, you know, to make it look futuristic or whatnot. I think it looks cool. It's a little bit big and thick compared to what I'm used to now in 2024, but you know, this was 2001, so we have to appreciate the limits of design at that time. So yeah, we open it up here. We've got basically pretty close to a full keyboard, and it's actually pretty nice to type on. It's not super cheap, and thank God it's not a chiclet keyboard or anything like that. So there's that. We've got 3 buttons over here on the side. We've got a button that looks like it's meant for initiating a chat conversation. We've got another button that would have opened your email, presumably. It's kind of the universal symbol for that. And then we have the power button. On the right side here, we've got this select button with these arrows, which I assume is for scrolling through messages. I'm not really sure what this button is for though. I'm thinking it might be, I don't know, if I had to guess, like flipping pages or something. And then, interestingly, we've got a speaker down here, which indicates that this thing was intended to have sound. And we've actually got volume controls on some of the keys here, which you could access by pressing the FN key. And the e-message had that as well. Presumably that would be for, you know, just alerting you that emails or messages had arrived, something along those lines. We've got a nice little LCD display here. It's probably about 8 to 10 inches wide and a couple inches tall. Not much, but you know, better than the LCD displays of the 1980s for sure. And I believe this here would be the antenna, most likely. We also have some function buttons. I guess these would be more like menu control buttons across the top here, and they would have functions displayed at the bottom that you could choose from. We've also got the power indicator light there as well. Yeah, kind of a pleasing design. You know, it has a nice feel to it. Like I said, it's kind of bulky. I think kind of everything in the early 2000s was bulky that way. So why can't I operate it? Well, when I was looking at the original auction photos, because of the dark translucent blue here on the bottom, it was really hard to see anything or make anything out. And if I'd had a clearer photo, I would have been able to see that there's this ribbon cable here coming from the keyboard. It's not plugged into anything. Anyway, I got it home and immediately wanted to power it up. So I pulled off the lid here and I threw in some AA batteries, and I realized that they were kind of loose. And I was like, why are they loose? And I mean, I could see a contact point up there, like normal for the positive side. And then when I looked even closer, I realized, oh, there's no wiring, there's nothing in there. So this thing has no motherboard. Essentially, the main thing about this device is not installed in it. We can see on the back here, which I didn't notice before, there's this kind of empty port. I'm guessing this was for charging, maybe via USB or something. I'm not really sure. Anyway, that's kind of where we're at with it. And yeah, unfortunately, I was going to do a deep dive video and, you know, explore it and stuff. And I was hoping that the software for it might have been preloaded onto the software disk for these wireless base stations. I was taking an educated guess that maybe they knew in advance that this would be coming out and included the software for it ahead of schedule on the base station. Maybe I was wrong on that one. But yeah, obviously the software would be completely useless because there's no actual hardware to run this thing. Now, why did Intel abandon this whole project? I don't think they abandoned it specifically. I think what happened was a couple things. Like I said earlier, the market for this sort of stuff became more commoditized. Is that the right word? So the profit margins for this sort of thing just, you know, made it not worthwhile. And then the other thing was, I read that a lot of Intel's clients, companies that made devices like this, did not like Intel wading into their space. They didn't like competing against the manufacturer of the chips that they used, which was exactly like what happened with Texas Instruments 2 decades earlier with calculators, where they were supplying the chips for the calculators and then decided to make calculators themselves. So I guess Intel kind of chickened out and just decided, nope, this isn't worthwhile, and completely pulled everything. So that's where it sits. I'm really excited to have it. The only other thing I have that's a prototype in my collection is the QBlazer modem here, which you can see is in clear plastic. And again, you can see it's got a label on the bottom that clearly marks it out as a prototype, demonstration only, not for resale, which this one doesn't have. I don't really know if this is in fact a prototype. This looks pretty polished in terms of the physical aspects of it. I feel like it's probably likely if they set up the tooling for this, they must have produced more than one of them, and that this isn't in fact the one that appears in the CES video. But I suppose it's possible maybe they just produced a one-off to kind of show what it looked like, and then the program got canceled before they actually started putting some guts into it. But I feel like this is probably just a pilot unit that never got its innards installed because the program was canceled right as they were starting to get ready for production. Pretty much the only people that would know for sure what was going on would be people that were working at Intel at the time. So if you're out there and you worked at Intel back then, or you know something about this, please drop me a line in the comments. I'd love to hear more about this and learn anything I can. As far as what I intend to do with it going forward, probably not much. Just keep it on display. It'd be tempting to try and rig it up with something so it could actually operate, but there's a lot of design elements that are sort of over my head. I'm not an electronics engineer, so I wouldn't have a clue how to figure out, you know, how the keyboard's wired, how the screen's wired, and stuff like that. Anyway, that's it for this video. I literally just got this not even a week ago, and I just thought it'd be really cool to show it off. So here it is. If you enjoy these sorts of short little show and tells, smack that like button. If you don't, hit the dislike. And if you're enjoying my videos generally, I hope you'll hit the subscribe button maybe. Or you could join my Patreon, which helps restore and maintain machines like this. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.